North End, a place where she spent all her childhood and has very strong and very vivid memories of the people that inhabited that very, very small area of King's Lynn, and yet was so strong in terms of its influence on the town. Good morning to you, Josphine.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you with us this morning. And we've been chatting sort of while the music's been playing this morning. You say that it was a small part of King's Lynn, but everybody knew everybody else because they were all intermarried. Is that right?
Yes, they had interbred for generations.
Everybody had married everybody else?
Yes, and everybody married fishermen, and the fisher girls married fishermen's sons, sort of thing. And everybody else outside North End were foreigners.
Yeah.
Why? If you lived in Highgate or Canada or South Lynn, you were a foreigner. They sort of intermarried like this all the time.
Well, your memories go back 50-odd years now, don't they?
Yes.
And you say that the characters were so much more real, so much more vivid in those days than perhaps people are today. Everybody seems to have a nickname. That's what I find odd about it.
Yes, sometimes I don't know how they got them, and what reasons. But I think Sweet Tea Norris must have got his through liking sweet tea. But how Broken Dish Bone got his, I'll never know. Broken Dish Bone. Yeah.
Strange name, isn't it?
Yeah.
There was also somebody called Dorger Ward, wasn't there?
Dorger Ward.
Dorger Ward.
Yeah, now I don't know how he got his name, whether he got it from the Dog Bank, and that was sort of Dorger turned into Dorger.
And somebody called Grassy Greenacre.
Grassy?
Was that just an abbreviation of his surname because he was called Greenacre? They called him Grassy Greenacre.
Probably, yeah. It sounds like it, doesn't it? But I mean, some real humorous characters. I mean, what did everybody enjoy themselves? Because they must have been very tough times.
Yeah, well, you see, we were all sort of related in one road, well, like Purlett Street. I mean, my grandmother Howard's sister Rebecca Wilkin lived next door. 2 doors up, Harriet Bailey, another sister, lived. Across the road, somebody else lived who was related. They were all related. That gave them a sort of community spirit that's still lacking.
Very, very strong
these days.
And I suppose that was important in a fishing community, which is literally, living in peril of its life all the time because of the dangers of going to sea.
Yes, it was very strong then.
Well, your father was a fisherman.
Yes. He was a fisherman, and so was my grandfathers, both my grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and great-great-grandfathers.
So everybody you knew pretty well were fisher folk.
Yes. There were other people living at the yard, various other people, and they were more or less all connected with the sea in some way or another.
Yeah.
I had an uncle who was a sailmaker, lived up King Street. He didn't really live in the area, but nearly everyone did something connected with the sea.
He was 100 yards away. He was a foreigner, was he?
Yeah. Well, no, he had special privileges, you see, because he was married to a fisherman's daughter. So that gave him special privileges.
What sort of special privileges?
Well, I don't know. The old fishermen used to stand on the bridge near the Tilden Smith and near the chapel in the moonlight. That was a sort of chapel near where the old Ben Cooley built the toilet. They used to stand there as well, and sometimes if they didn't like anyone, they make the loads a bit of misery. Did he a little abuse at them and various other things.
You make it sound as if it was impossible for an outsider to come in. I mean, you were a young girl, and no doubt you went out with young men when you got to your teens. But I mean, would it have been a terrible sin to have gone out with somebody who was not from your little community?
Well, not so much when I was young, but I think possibly when my mother was young it would have been more. I mean, my generation, we began to marry sort of out of fishing families,
Yeah.
Why was it so closely tight-knit? Was it because they were afraid that the community would die if people drifted away, or were they just suspicious of everybody from outside?
Yeah, I think it was because, they were all related and they were suspicious of everybody outside. It's really difficult to explain the characters. They were all sort of different, they were real, I keep repeating myself, they were real sort of oddities, each one was, more or less.
What, do you think the oddity aspect of it was because there had been so much interbreeding? It's sort of royal families that you get peculiar people, when they keep marrying brothers and sisters and cousins. But do you think that may have attributed being part of the cause?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I'm sure.
Well, you got simpletons and real oddball characters simply because of that.
Yes, and the way of life too, I think, the way and the hardship too, that pulled them all together.
Yeah.
So I know my grandmother, she would make stews and God knows what, and sort of if anyone was ill, would give them stew. There was a different kind of feeling than there is today. I mean, they build a community centre now and expect miracles, expect everyone to love each other, and they don't realise that this community in North End was because it was all interrelated.
And people cared, literally, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about the housing, because we're literally talking about a triangle of streets, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about, what, North Street, Pilot Street, and what was the other streets?
Oh, there was Chapel Street, and there was Austin Street, and Albert Street and Albert Avenue. They were all.
And that was all within a very small part of Lynn here. And what were the houses like? I mean, were they big houses, little houses? Because you lived in a yard, didn't you?
Yeah, I lived in North End Yard. Yeah, and some of the houses were pretty grotty. They were small, just 2-bedroom and 2 up. But there were some nice houses, too. I mean, you'd get some houses where they'd bring about 7 children up in just 2 bedrooms up and 2 down.
That must have been a bit of a squash.
Yeah. I think some of them, wanted to come down. That was obvious up the yards, up Begley's yard. But then again, up the Boneyard, the houses were fairly big up there, quite big up there. It was a sort of hodgepodge of different types of houses, really.
Yeah. And what was your childhood like? I mean, can you remember what was required of you as a young girl, and indeed your sisters too?
Well, I didn't have any sisters. I got a brother. He was a port pilot, but I used to go to school and then come home and do all kinds of things. Help my mother go up the station, take all the stuff at the station and on a barrow.
Fish, you mean?
Well, the prawns, they used to pack them out in bags and with a cover over and take them up the station on a barrow, and I used to usually go with them. And sometimes as I got older, I'd take the little barrow up myself with a couple of pecks of shrimps on in a bag and things that I could manage.
Yeah, and they were to go to other towns, presumably.
Yeah, well, the fishing used to send a lot of the stuff up to Billingsgate to commission agents. And then you'd usually send them up all the week. And probably at the weekend, you'd get a condemned note for them, and then the fishermen, my father used to go absolutely mad, He used to call Billingsgate commission agents all kinds of things, not repeatable.
Because he wouldn't get paid for those things,
No, they'd get this condemned note, it was terrible. Really, before the war, my father had some customers in Portsmouth, and he used to send all his prawns. They had to be good ones down to Portsmouth by rail. And then, of course, when the slump came, things began to get bad. He lost them. They packed up. They gave up. They could import prawns and various things into the country cheaper than our fishermen could.
Was that the start of the demise of the North End then?
Yes, I think it really was, because I can remember about 6 of the old smacks being put on the point of the fleet. My father's Fred Archer amongst them, and old Tiffany Goodson put his on, and there were quite a few.
What was the feeling within the community then when things started to go bad and the depression hit to a certain extent and the fishing fleet tended to die? I mean, how did you feel within that community?
Well, they didn't think very much to it, but there was nothing much they could do. I mean, it's the same as today. There's nothing much people can do about it, really, when you come to think.
Did they think that was actually going to kill off their community that they had, or were they thinking, it's just another one of the loads that we've suffered before and we'll win through it?
Yeah, they thought things might pick up sooner or later, but then, of course, the war came and they took away all the younger fishermen, well, most of them for the Navy, and then things picked up quite a lot.
In what way? You say things picked up?
Well, they all went shrimping and prawning and cockling and whatnot, and they were in great demand, you see, because everything else was rationed.
So they did quite well during the war.
Yes.
Though that wasn't without its hazards, was it? Because you were saying that occasionally you got bombed by the Allies.
Oh, yes, that was a Stag's Head just at the end of the war in Europe. There was there's kind of targets in the wash. There's some over the west side, and I think it was on the east side, this target. and the stag's head was lying on the sand, and there were quite a few boats they were cobbling because they put the boats on.
I must say that the Stag's Head is not a pub on this occasion.
No, it's a fishing boat. Yeah. And the Americans sort of came over and fired on the boats, and there was a boy killed, a boy Pratt. He was killed. I think he was about 16 and a half years old, and several of the other boats were sort of fired on. But the Stag's Head, they couldn't get her off. The men came up. And I remember my father, he was in the Daily Bread, and he got a big hole in the side of the boat, and he cut the sail up, or so he said.
Yeah.
Very dramatic,
Yes.
my father, and nailed this sail on the hole and brought the vessel up to harbour, But it was a bit.
But what of these dramatic stories, Josphine? I mean, you must have had so many nights when you've been waiting for the fishermen to come back and it's been bad weather, you've been worried about them. Can you remember any of those?
Yeah, but you see, the wash is more treacherous for the sands. You get on, the boat gets on there and she'll knock a bottom out if they're not careful.
Well, because of the currents and the shifting sandbanks. That's the problem.
Yeah, as time goes by, the tide goes out different channels, you see.
Well, there must have been losses. I mean, there must have been fishermen and boats that didn't come back. But, I mean,
there was old Molly Smith. She lived in North End Yard. She lost 3 sons, and Early Masson, that was another fisherman. There was 4 of them lost on a boat called the Mystery. I mean, I think I wasn't born then, but that was quite a racial memory amongst the fishermen,
And were they commemorated? I mean, was the loss of those fishermen commemorated in any way? Did they have a service every year, or was it just, it's happened and that's that?
No. And I find a great difference because I've recently been to Scotland, and there were nearly a whole village of Scotch fishermen drowned in the Wash in 1876. Now, there's a monument in the cemetery to one of the boats, a beautiful star, and there's 8 Scotch fishermen buried there. Now, up in Scotland, they commemorate them, because I'm sort of in correspondence with the fishermen up there.
Yes, but down here?
But down here, they didn't. I mean, it's just sort of, as I said, racial memory. I was told about it, and I can remember it,
And it was just passed on word to mouth?
Yeah.
And that was that.
But this poor old lady, I mean, I can remember her, Molly Smith, in North End Yard. And, of course, she lost 3 sons. I think 2 of them were buried, but one was never found.
But when that happened, did the rest of the community rally round and look after her for the rest of her life? Or what happened?
Yes, again, you see, the family did. All the family did. That was why you get this community thing. The family all was very close.
Yeah. Well, there may be many people listening who remember some of the characters you've just been mentioning, and indeed some of the good times and the bad times from the fishing life of King's Lynn. If they do, then of course they can always ring us on Norwich 617-321 and share those memories, or ring us here at our office in King's Lynn and share them with our secretary here. The number, of course, King's Lynn 763140.
You had to think about that.
Coming in just at this moment. Well, I had to find a piece of paper. I've written it down.
Well, we have actually got one comment from Florence Smith, but we'll deal with that after Fred Astaire.
I know that the Greenland Fishery Museum, I think Miss Bullock lives there, who used to be headmistress at Garford Park School, but no, I don't remember anything about they went whaling in King's Lynn. I know the rapes had something to do with it, but I don't know.
They went whaling from King's Lynn?
Yeah, Blubberhouse Creek. There's still a creek we call Blubberhouse Creek. I don't know what the real name of it is. The Warfick brothers used to have a boat building yard up there. That's how I know. We used to go up on the Fred Archer and go up on the slip. Yeah. But apparently there was a lot of whaling went on. Now, I don't know very much about that,
Nobody you knew actually went whaling, presumably?
No.
Well, I suppose they would have taken the blubber up there and melted it down for oil, I suppose. I mean,
I suppose so.
It seems fairly logical. Yeah. So she obviously doesn't remember too much about that. I've got a slightly risque story here, which I'm going to read anyway, because Doreen phoned it in.
The manager can't get you in King's Lynn. You'll be all right.
I'm safe here. Yes, Doreen phoned from King's Lynn, and she says it's with regard to P.C. MacDonald. Remember? He's the one. Isn't he the one you referred to earlier on as being the one that carried around the
No, that was Sergeant Ede who lived up Albert Avenue. Now, old MacDonald was good old policeman.
Old MacDonald,
Yeah.
He was a nice old boy, wasn't he?
Oh, he was, yeah.
Well, there's a nice story here. She says, Doreen used to have some friends who lived in Pilot Street and North Street, and their surname was Balls, right? And, yeah, all right, okay, I'll carry on. And Dolly was riding over Dodman's Bridge on her bike with no lights, and P.C. MacDonald came riding up behind and asked, "What's your name?" "Balls," she replied. "Where's your light?" "Next to my liver," she replied, and pedalled off.
Yeah, that's typical, yeah.
That's the kind of relationship you had with the police.
Yeah,
there,
yeah, it was a good relationship.
Next to my liver.
He'd have a few quiet words with anyone that was going too far.
Yeah.
Oh, Mac would. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was married to Dorothy MacDonald, who plays the piano at the Fillmore. She belongs to the King's Lynn Players and very well known person.
Oh God! Well, we probably maligned her reputation or her family name.
I'm not quite sure whether you mentioned this. Was this the gentleman who used to take the stepladder with him?
No, that was PC.
No, that was Sergeant E.
Well, can I ask why he used to take a stepladder with him just to see in the windows? I mean, why was he so concerned about drinking up time?
Well, he wanted promotion, so we all thought, and that was a good way to get. You see, the more cases you got, more people you put in. Well, you got up the stone steps, the more promotion you got. That's what we thought.
And did he catch many people?
Oh, yes, he got on quite. He got to be a detective in the end.
Oh, so he obviously paid off. I wonder if you still carried around the step-ladders when you got into the CID.
I wonder whether anybody remembers sitting in a pub at 11:30, 11:45 at night, and seeing this face peering through a window on the top window with the policeman on top of a stepladder.
Lovely, wasn't it? What about the shops that were in that area, though? Because you mentioned in your letter somebody called Polly Goodson.
Oh, yes, she was a lovely old lady. She had this dark, mysterious shop. And she perhaps had a few cabbages in the window. And next door she had a fish shop. And they had open frying pans in those days.
Mm.
And she used to cook break blocks and cartwheels. That was great big thick break blocks.
Break blocks?
And cartwheels.
That was your nickname for them, was it?
Yeah, great big thick chips. And they were lovely.
Break blocks.
So what were the cartwheels?
Oh, they were fritters.
They were fritters.
Yeah, she used to make fritters. That was potatoes dipped in batter,
Yeah.
and then thrown in the pan.
Yeah.
But some of the boys, they used to buy these bottles of pop, used to have those funny lids on, and they'd shake them up, take the lid off, and then that'd squirt right over the counter into the fat. And they'd be,
Oh, gosh,
go up. It's just so dangerous.
Yeah, but it was. I bet she used to scold them for that, hadn't she?
Yeah.
What about other shopkeepers, though? Were there other real characters in that area?
Oh, yeah, there was Chitley Gordon's. That was up at the bottom of Bird's Yard. And she used to have this contraption in the window to catch flies. And that was peculiar, and see all these dead, it was a sort of top, and the flies would go in the sides and die in some horrible, hideous liquid in the bottom.
I think they used to put vinegar or beer or something in to
Yeah.
attract them, hadn't they? And then they drown in it. I remember those old Victorian flycatchers. I suppose that's what it was.
And we used to sell all kinds of weird things, gobstoppers and, sort of peculiar things. Tiger nuts.
You're also saying that your own mum was a very sort of hard nut. She was a very hard woman.
Yes, well, she'd been brought up when she was young. She had to pack mussels up down the bank and throw them on the Wen car and do all kinds of things that a boy did and hawk fish around the banks and
Was that
solicitors' officers, and she hated that.
was that normal for girls to have to do that
Well,
very
yeah,
hard work?
lots of the old people in North End would have a bath of fish outside the doors, with thornbacks and butts and
Yeah.
all that kind of thing.
So what were your jobs as a child?
My jobs? Oh, we used to go down the Anglo to see old brooks and get petrol and all sorts of things. Father had an old handy Billy engine, petrol and paraffin or something, I don't know what it was. And I used to go get petrol down there. I used to do all kinds of things, go up Everett's and get the Skinners and get the bags. They used to make them, the bags that they sent the prawns and shrimps away. You could get them at Skinner's or Mrs. Everett's.
Yeah.
Go get them, all kinds of things.
Did you have to spend a lot of time working, which sort of made it difficult for you to go to school, or what?
Oh, no. No, they wouldn't make you do things that would interfere with you going to school at all. They all sort of wanted you to get educated.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, look, we said people could ring in. I didn't know we could actually do this in Kingsley, but apparently we can even take phone calls on air.
Doesn't sound like one to me.
It sounds as if they're in the phone box, Trevor. We've got a problem there.
I think it's a third piece of string from the left.
Fine. She's gone, actually. I think she must have been in the phone box. We'll see if we can get that lady back. It was Mrs. Mickleborough, but we'll see if we can sort that out in just a few minutes' time. I know one of the sad things for you, Josphine, is the fact that some of the houses have been pulled down. And in fact, in the 1950s, when it was being proposed that that section of the town should lose some of its houses, you wrote to government ministers and all kinds of people to tell them that it was a bad thing. Well, I mean, why did you feel so strongly about it?
Well, we knew that some of the houses had got to come down, but not sort of all of them had to come down. And they wanted them to come down to build roads, you see, and I suppose you can't stop progress. You've got to have a road. But what annoyed us a great deal was that a lot of them were compulsory purchase, and some of the people got practically nothing. They just got about £5 or £10, or, well, I'm not sure what, because people don't tell you what they get for the ground. Well, of course, others did get quite a bit, you know. I think they kept the Rafe and the fishermen, you know, sort of saying to them, get out. They had to pay them because it was a loss of their living for their property. But I suppose we didn't feel we wanted that community broken up like that.
Well, was it a direct, I think, idea of the authorities within King's Lynn to get rid of that community? They'd had enough of it.
Well, it was at that stage when they were pulling down all the terraced houses and the little cottages and things. You know, they're that mad thing where they're going to build these huge toll blocks. Well, not in King's Lynn, but, you know, that was at that mad phrase, which they now realise is quite wrong, and people don't want to live miles up in the sky. They want a little bit of ground to call their own, and you know.
But it wasn't the fact that they just about had enough of the community. It was they're fed up with a sort of secular society within Kingsley, and they wanted to amalgamate everybody together.
No, I didn't think it was that, really, because we were getting a bit more milder then. You know, the community wasn't quite as...
You're a bit more tolerant to outsiders.
Yeah, it was getting a bit more civilised, I suppose people would say.
Well, look, we were trying to get Mrs. Mickleborough on the phone. I think we've probably got her there now. I hope so. Anyway, good morning to you. Can you hear us all right? No? We are having trouble?
I think it's that bit of chewing gum. It's not quite holding together with the string.
You can hear us. Can you hear us, Mrs. Mickleborough? No, I think we're going to have to try and abandon that and see what else we can do. It's just one of those technical. Perhaps we can ring her back on our ordinary number from Norwich and see if we can sort that out. I know she used to be Nora Fayers. I don't know if that rings a bell with you at all. No?
No, you know, I know heaps and heaps of people by the names before they were married and all that. You know, I still kind of tend to think of them as names that I knew when I was young.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's always the way, isn't it? You tend to forget who they are. Do you still remember those people when you see them in the street now?
Yes, there's quite a lot of the real old North End still down North End.
Because there was a North End society formed at one time, but I think that sort of died away, didn't it?
Well, I tell you who started that. There was a little chap. He had this stall on the market, and he had a warehouse in where the Tudor Roads is now. You went through that big old door, and he had a warehouse. He used to sell old bits and pieces on the market, you know, old chairs and sort of antique dealer. And he started it off. He was a bit arty-crafty type, and he sort of thought that there was a lot of character and a lot of unusual things in this part. And then he sort of got the fishermen together. They were all getting annoyed about it. All the people in North End were really getting annoyed about it because they didn't want to move out of North End. A lot of them didn't. Certainly didn't. Yeah. Certainly didn't want to be put on a housing estate miles out of North Lynn, where I live, you know. And of course we went and then ran. They had a meeting. The government, someone from the government came down the Cornwall, and we made posters and went there and sort of laid siege to the Cornwall. But
it didn't do any good.
No, it didn't do any good, you know.
So what happened? What happened to the community once it'd been split up? Did it just totally disappear?
Well, a lot of them moved in to what is the Luke Road area, Lewis Street. There were quite a few of them living there, as it was in Sir Lewis Street and Lansdowne Street and that bit. So,
But they didn't. I mean, apart from that, people didn't really keep in contact.
now, they put a lot of people on the Northland housing estate, and some of them bought houses, but they sort of dispersed quite a bit.
It must have been very sad for you to have lost so many good friends and relatives in that way. When especially when you felt that it was unnecessary. Do you think it would have happened today if such proposals were to come forward now? Do you think they would still disperse those people, or they'd try and hold it all together?
Well, they did say, it's a funny thing. After they got the road built, they had said that they were going to put warehouses around the church. They sold a lot of it. This garage built on one bit, but that caused no end of trouble. And then they said they were going to build houses, which they did, and they always promised that the North End people would be allowed to come back into those houses. But of course, they never did. They were cost so much to build, they just put them up for sale.
Oh, that's very sad. Well, look, I mean, we believe in trying on this programme, so I'm going to try for the third time now to talk to Mrs. Mickleborough and hope that she can hear me. Can you?
Hello.
Ah, success at last. Sorry about all the problems we've been having, but I gather your maiden name was Nora Fayers, was it?
Yes.
And you got a question?
No, I just wondered if Josephine remembers her father, Bramman, used to take us down below on his boat for a day out on Sundays during the war.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, the pennies drop now.
And the men would do the fishing, the prawns and the shrimp. And on the way home, while they were cooking them, Josephine would have us down in the cabin telling us ghost stories.
Yes, I do remember now.
You were a bit of a one, weren't you, Josephine?
Putting a hand out of the little hatch at the top, picking the best prawns and bringing down for us to eat round a little fire and the face from the little chimney.
Yeah. Yes, I remember now. Well, I think there's some things you sort of forget, don't you?
Nora, can you remember any of the ghost stories that she frightened you to death with?
No, I was very young.
Obviously, the memory of being frightened stayed with you. Well, what sort of a boat was it? Can you describe it now, all these years on?
One of the fishing boats, her dad's fishing boat, and that was our day out during the war.
Yeah.
We couldn't go anywhere else, but we used to go down below on these boats, and if they were cockling, they moored the boat, and we'd get in a rowboat and go out to the sand for the day on the sandbank.
That was great fun.
Oh, yes, it was.
Love it. Well, I know Josephine has always been a bit of a budding writer, though I don't know if she's ever ventured into print at all. Have you, Josephine?
No.
No, because you used to get into trouble, hadn't you, for writing things down when you were a young girl?
Oh, yes, at my Granny Howards. My cousin Maud and I, we used to write, and then it'd be all terrible trouble because we used to take all the people that lived around us and various other people, like the schoolmaster, Hungry Fisher, and all them, and old Charlie Barron, and used to put them into these stories. And
fictional stories, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yes, I see why you could have got into trouble.
Yes, serious trouble. My mother burnt them all the sort of funeral pyre one day. She went mad and got them all together and burnt them.
Can you remember your mother out on the sand? May I say, with her bloomers?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a secret story here. What's it got to do with bloomers?
We didn't have a swimsuit or anything suitable for paddling in, and her clothes all used to be pushed down into these enormous bloomers.
Yeah.
I mean, she took this enormous dress into her bloomers, you mean?
Well, aprons and all sorts.
Oh, God.
Didn't she go to it?
Yeah.
The big pocket on the front of the apron.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Oh, marvellous.
Yeah.
Okay, what are your memories, though, of the North End people? I mean, what sort of people were they? Yes, go on, Nora. Oh, sorry, Trevor's just cut you off. Are you still with us? No, she's gone. What did Trevor? He's cut you off in mid-stride there, so we've lost that call. Sorry about that. We'll never find out now, will we? It's one of those things. But some happy days. Are you getting any calls at your end, Nick, on this?
Not at the moment, we're not, no.
You see, the thing is that when we were discussing North End people earlier on, it was said by Trevor Austin that they were a very reclusive kind of set of people, that they didn't actually talk to anybody, and even all these years on, they shy away from talking about their society and talking to other people. Is that the case?
Yes, I find it easier to write what I feel and think on paper. I tend to want to shy away from people.
Yeah.
Unless I'm ever so mad, and then blow my top.
Then you go berserk. Well, we're getting some more calls at this end anyway. Polly Goodson was her grandmother's sister. I'm not sure whose grandmother's sister. And apparently she would have been a millionairess if everybody had paid their bills.
Yes, true.
She used to let everybody pay on tick. That
Yeah.
was the norm, was it? Everybody paid on tick.
Yeah. She was a lovely old lady.
Did everybody pay on tick because basically they couldn't afford to pay up front, I presume? I mean, they didn't have the cash in hand to actually to pay them straight away.
We can probably ask
yeah.
Mrs. Ellis herself because she's on the line now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What was it you were saying about people paying on tick?
I was when I read a lot of in the paper about North End, they never mentioned Polly Goodson, and that was my grandmother's sister.
I see.
And I remember all the family saying she should have been a millionaire if she'd have made people pay her bills. And I wondered if this lady did remember that she was very, very kind and would let people go without paying.
Yes, I do. I remember her as a very, very kind old lady.
Yes, well, I remember it because I was only a little girl at the time when I visited her. But I remember this shop, and she had a great big fish in a glass case. Great big fish, and I believe it went to the museum.
What sort of shop did you say it was? Just a fish shop, was it?
Oh, and groceries.
It was a general food shop then.
General food shop, yes.
Yeah, but I suppose everybody had it on the slate because they had to wait for the money to come back from the fish that they'd sold to Billingsgate Market, which then came out saying it was rotten anyway, so they never got the money.
But anybody I mentioned to about Polly, they all remember her, and all this. Everybody had a kind word for her.
Yeah, you obviously have very fond memories of that society, that little section of Kingston.
Yes. My grandmother lived up the North End Yard. Mrs. Drew, Charlotte Drew. Did that lady remember Charlotte Drew?
Yeah.
She was killed coming home from the bus when the Eagle was bombed.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was lots of the Goodsons. They were all more or less belated. You remember all those, do you?
Yeah, I relate to Benjamin Goodson. He lived to be about 101, didn't he?
No, he was not on our side of the family. There was Booster Goodson.
Yeah.
And Becky, Aunt Becky. Do you remember Aunt Becky? She's still alive. She's over 90.
I think what this proves is what Josphine was saying earlier on, which is that everybody's related to everybody else in that particular part of the world.
Yes.
Yeah, there are so many branches of the family, you quickly lose track of them all.
Yes.
Any other strong memories from that shop in those days?
Oh, well, all the children would play together, all mingle together, not like nowadays. You don't see a child for this. Frightened to let them go out of your sight. Everybody, you trusted your children with any elderly people. I can't remember any nasty incidents down there, not at all.
Well, thanks very much for phoning in, Mrs. Ellis.
All right, I thank that lady for mentioning Polly. It was nice to mention.
All right, thanks very much for ringing in.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, some marvellous stories there from that section. Did you think that it's ever possible to get the North End Society back together again? Because it would be lovely to be able to preserve all these memories and stories.
Yes, it would. Really would.
The trouble is
that I often wanted to write it all down, but as I said, I think it would need somebody, sort of more equipped as a writer than I am. I think it'd be a shame if it was all lost, all the people and all the things they did. It'd be a terrible shame.
I know a couple of books have been written about that little community. Have you read any of those?
No, I haven't.
Oh, well, we can't ask you for an opinion on them. A couple of other comments coming in, and Mrs. Ellis again. Oh, it's the sister of Mrs. Ellis, I think, referring to Polly Goodson, says she used to be a very old-fashioned lady, dressed with garters, long skirts, and an apron under her skirts, where she kept the money. I mean, she
seems the safest place to me.
She had to lift her skirt every time she wanted some change, then.
Yeah.
I see.
No wonder she had so many customers.
That's right. Charlotte Goodson was Mrs. Ellis and Mrs. Kent's grandmother, came up from Kent during war, and the widow warrant officer in the Navy. He was the youngest gunnery officer in the Navy. And Mr. Howlett phoned, he's a North Ender, nicknamed Fantod Howlett.
Oh, it wasn't his mother that used to live up at the whitening yard and had the parrot that used to swear terrible?
Well, it says here his mother used to sell ice cream.
Yeah,
in a
that's
way.
right. That's the one.
She used to swear a lot.
No, the parrot did.
Oh,
Yeah,
parrot?
the parrot. And a parrot hung out on the wall.
Oh, I see. Well, the parrot would have picked it up from somewhere, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
do you remember her ice cream?
Oh, yeah, they used to push it round all over the place. That was homemade. Like Stevie Woods, he used to make homemade ice cream
I
as
love
well.
these names, but you can't remember where they all came from, though, can you? What was it, Stevie
No,
Woods?
Stevie Woods. He was the local milkman, and he used to make the most gorgeous ice cream. He had a house next to the Bentwick on Look Road. Yeah, most gorgeous ice cream.
And Mr. Howlett also says his uncle kept the corner shop on the corner of North End and Pilot Street, and his name was known as Boats Benefit.
Tom Boots.
Boots.
Tom Boots. Yeah, they had a shop opposite the toilet and on the corner, and he sold sand for off the barrow. You know, outside.
Yeah,
And
to see
this barrow was right on the corner, so God knows what happened. There were traffic coming round the corner. You know, the old wooden barrows.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So,
He used
lovely.
to sell sand.
I'd love to know how he got the name Fantod. That's a really peculiar nickname, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantod Howlett. They really were peculiar, many of these names. Well, it's been lovely talking to you this morning, and I'm sure we'll get many, many more memories written to us. I wish you'd put it all down in a book, because you write so well, Josphine, and I'm sure lots of people would be very interested to just read those recollections of your childhood.
Yeah.
There's just one comment that's just coming in here, Josephine, before you go. Mrs. Gould's father, Johannes Cornelius Portfleet, which is a Dutch name, was apparently born in North End. His father's father was a Dutchman who came over from Holland to cut the Great Ouse, and he married a Lynn girl. Does that ring any bells with you?
It wouldn't be the Pelts that lived in North Street next to old Biggs, the newsagent. There were some Dutch people lived there called Van Pelt.
Well, John Cornelius Portfleet apparently was his
No.
Dutch name, so it might not be the same person. No,
No, they were quite. They came over and stayed and lived in North Street.
Were there many
Right.
Dutch immigrants, in fact, came across? Because, I mean, you know, there's a lot of intermingling between the fishing communities of Holland and Britain, aren't there? Were there
Well,
many Dutch people?
They were the only Dutch family that I knew of. I mean, there might have been others, but
Yeah.
they're the only ones that I knew.
I know they've had
Lovely family.
Yes, they
they
had a
were.
very strong influence on East Anglia, haven't they, the Dutch?
Yeah.
What about the Scottish fishermen who came down from Scotland? Funnily enough, I mean, did any of them stay, find a Lynn girl, and stay through their love for them?
No, they used to come follow the heron down to Yarmouth and Lowestoft. And then they never used to come into Lynn or the Wash. They used to go ashore at Yarmouth and Lowestoft, you know, and the Scotch girls used to come down and get all the fish at Yarmouth, you know, on the quay. And then they used to sail home again. But the beautiful Star and the Thane in this other boat, now I can't remember the name of the other one. There was this awful storm, that was 1875. And the 3 boats were lost in the Wash. They brought the beautiful Star up to Lynn, and they found 5 men dead in her, drowned. And then they found the Thane down Daisley Sled on the Mussel Scope. They found the other one, the Thane, I think it was, with 3 men they found. So the whole 8 are buried in our cemetery at Hardwick Road under this lovely monument. But they didn't actually, Scotch fishermen didn't actually come into the Wash into Lynn, you know. That was just that the boat was brought up here and the men were buried here.
Right. Can I just say that Mrs. Ellis, if Mrs. Ellis is still listening, can she contact Mrs. Thomas? Seems like we're getting people together.
Well, why not? That's what
We
we're
have a
here for.
number in Norwich, so if Mrs. Ellis, who was speaking on the phone just now, would like to call us on Norwich 617-321, Mrs. Thomas would love to have a word with you
Well, I'll
about the
tell you,
North End
we've got Mrs. Ellis's telephone number here, so we can pass it on to you, and then you can pass it on to her, can't you?
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds a very complicated way of doing it, but yes, fine.
It is like two-way family favourites,
It
isn't
is,
it?
yes.
Yeah.
How is the weather over there, Judy?
Actually, it's so bright, the sun's shining in my eyes at the moment. I must go up and close the curtains because I can't actually see Josphine anymore because she's silhouetted against the window. But beautifully warm and sunny in King's Lynn. It's been lovely talking to you. I'd just like to know that, is the fishing community today, do you think, a totally different kind of place to what it was in your day?
No, I don't think so. I think they've still got the characters, you know. There's still a few of the old fishing families still going, but there's a lot of new youngsters come into it.
Yeah, which is
But
a good
there's-
thing, of course,
yeah.
isn't it? You know, keep the blood going.
Yeah, but I still think there's quite a lot of characters going, but they're more spread out and a bit more civilised.
Smashing. Well, Josphine, thanks ever so much for joining us this morning. We look forward to people's letters indeed about the North End Society, the North End people in the future. Do write to us at Radio Norfolk. We're going to play the intro-outro competition just after the 11 o'clock news. So outro competition just after the 11 o'clock news. So outro competition just after the 11 o'clock news. So outro competition just after the 11 o'clock news. So outro competition just after the 11